The Galactic Council Chamber was built to remind every species who held power. Its ceiling rose like a hollowed mountain, layered with light and moving stars. Seats carved from living crystals floated in perfect circles, each one shaped to its owner's biology. This was where empires were judged, borders were erased, and wars were approved with calm voices. Today, the chamber was amused. At the center, a hologram flickered to life. A simple star map appeared, showing the outer edge of a prosperous trade region. One system glowed brighter than the rest, small, yellow, unremarkable. Earth. A short audio clip played. The translation engines finished almost instantly. This region is under human protection. Do not advance. This is your final warning. The message ended. No threats. No emotion. No explanation. For half a second, the chamber was silent. Then laughter rolled through the hall. A tall insectoid counselor clicked his mandibles in open mockery. That's it. What is the message? Another delegate, tall and furred, leaned back in their seat. Humans still exist? I thought they fractured centuries ago. Screens around the chamber filled with data. Human territory was small. No visible alliances. No massive fleets. No active expansion. Their borders had not moved in generations. They looked quiet. Scans show no mobilization, a council analyst said. No energy spikes. No shipyards are increasing output. The laughter grew louder. One counselor waved a clawed hand. Then why are we even discussing this? The coalition needs those routes. Humans can file a protest like everyone else. Only one being did not laugh. Observer Kethrail sat slightly apart from the main ring. His species did not rule worlds. They survived by watching others destroy themselves. His eyes, dark, layered, and slow, never left the star map. Something is wrong, Kethrail said quietly. No one listened. The vote passed in seconds. The coalition fleets would advance. Not to attack Earth. Not yet. Just to pass through. To test the warning. Because warnings from weak species usually meant nothing. Across the chamber, the hologram zoomed in as the first wave of coalition ships entered human space. Nothing happened. No alarms. No weapons fire. No response. The fleets were massive. Thousands of ships. Carriers, cruisers, support vessels. Enough force to crush a dozen minor civilizations. They crossed the borderline. Still nothing. See, a counselor said smugly. Empty space. Hours passed. Coalition commanders reported strange readings. Human systems were active, but unmanned. Stations powered, but empty. Planets intact, but silent. No distress calls. No evacuation signs. No defense platforms. It was as if humanity had simply stepped aside. Perhaps they fled, someone suggested. Kethrail shook his head slowly. No species leaves everything behind. As the fleets pushed deeper, long-range sensors began to fail. Not all at once. Just small errors. Navigation drifted by fractions of a degree. Communication lag increased. Minor issues. Easily ignored. Until the first ship vanished. It was a scout vessel at the edge of the formation. One moment it was there. The next, it was gone. No explosion. No debris. No energy spike. Just absence. Sensor glitch, the fleet commander said. Recalibrate. Minutes later, another ship disappeared. Then another. This time, panic rippled through the command channels. We are losing vessels without contact. From what direction? Unknown. Kethrail felt a chill run through his spine. He accessed old records. Ancient human military theory. Fragmented archives no one cared to preserve. One line stood out. Silence is not absence. It is preparation. On the bridge of the lead coalition flagship, alarms finally screamed. Power levels dipped across the fleet. Not drained, redirected. Something was pulling energy, not from ships, but from space itself. Identify the source, the commander shouted. No answer came. Then every screen on every ship flickered. A single image replaced the data feeds. A human symbol, simple, old, unmistakable. And a voice spoke. Calm. Humans. Unchanged by fear. You have crossed the line. The transmission cut. In the council chamber, the laughter died. Live feeds showed the flagship's lights going dark. Engines failed. Weapons powered down. Thousands of ships drifted helplessly, silent and blind. No shots were fired. No explosions. Just absolute control. Kethrail stood slowly. They warned us. The hologram shifted again. The human system dimmed, not weakened, but closed, as if a door had been sealed. Somewhere, far beyond sensors, something ancient had awakened, and the galaxy had just made a mistake it could not undo. The Coalition fleet did not panic at first. Experienced commanders had faced ambushes, electronic warfare, even star-killing weapons. The loss of power was alarming, but temporary. At least that was what doctrine said. Backup systems were activated. Emergency beacons launched. Crews waited for engines to restart. They never did. Across thousands of ships, the same report echoed again and again. No propulsion, no weapons, no faster-than-light drives. The fleet was alive, but helpless. On the flagship Triumphant Resolve, Admiral Corvesh slammed a claw into the command console. Restore power manually. Reroute from life support if you have to. Engineers tried. Nothing responded. The systems were not damaged. They were locked, as if something else had taken control and refused to let go. Then the stars began to move. Not drift. Not shift with normal stellar motion. They bent. Outside the viewports, space itself twisted in subtle waves, like heat rising from metal. Distance became unreliable. Ships that should have been kilometers apart appeared suddenly closer, or impossibly far. Navigation reports reality distortion, an officer said, voice tight with disbelief. We are no longer operating under known physics. That was when the screams started. Not from weapons fire. Not from decompression. From communications. Emergency channels exploded with overlapping voices. Captains shouting, crews crying out as ships at the edge of the formation began to disappear again. This time, they did not vanish cleanly. One cruiser folded inward, its hull bending as if squeezed by invisible hands. Another stretched into a thin line of light before snapping out of existence. No debris. No explosion. Erasure. Whatever this is, Corvesh whispered, it's choosing targets. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the atmosphere had changed completely. No one was laughing now. Live feeds streamed from Coalition Command. Counselors watched their strongest military force unravel without a single visible enemy. This is impossible, one delegate said. No species controls space itself. Kethrael stood unmoving, eyes locked on the data streams. Humans never controlled space, he said. They studied it. Historical files flooded his personal display. Old human research, once dismissed as theoretical nonsense. Gravitational manipulation, vacuum energy control, dimensional anchoring. Weapons not built to destroy, but to deny. They aren't fighting the fleet, Kethrael continued. They're removing it from relevance. Another ship vanished on screen. A counselor's voice trembled. Why haven't the humans attacked directly? Because humans didn't need to. Inside human territory, far beyond Coalition sensors, something ancient stirred. Deep beneath Earth's crust, structures older than most galactic civilizations hummed softly. Not factories. Not weapons platforms. Safeguards. On a moon orbiting a dead star, a long silent array unfolded like a mechanical flower. It did not aim outward. It listened. In deep interstellar voids, invisible nodes activated, stitching together a network no outsider had ever mapped. Humanity had not defended its borders with walls. They had rewritten the rules of entry. Back in the trapped fleet, terror finally broke discipline. This is an execution, a captain screamed over open channels. We need to surrender. But surrender required someone to listen. The human voice returned without warning. It played across every frequency. Not loud. Not angry. Patient. Coalition command. You are now inside a restricted containment zone. Your systems are disabled to prevent further escalation. Remain stationary. Admiral Corvesh swallowed. We are not attacking. We are withdrawing. A pause followed. Long enough to feel intentional. Withdrawal is no longer possible. The words hit harder than any weapon. On one ship, a junior officer whispered, they planned this long before we arrived. More vessels vanished, not randomly now, but methodically. Carriers first. Command ships second. Support vessels last. Cutting the head, then the spine. The galaxy was watching. Neutral systems sealed their borders. Merchant fleets rerouted months out of their way. Ancient empires that had ignored humanity for centuries began reviewing old treaties with shaking hands. A single phrase spread through diplomatic channels. Human space is closed. Kethrael accessed deeper archives. records buried under layers of disinterest. Human military philosophy from their early interstellar age. They believed war should be short. They believed escalation should be final. They believed that if a line was drawn, crossing it meant accepting consequences without negotiation. On the flagship, Corvesh made a decision that would end his career if he survived. Open a direct channel to Earth, he said. Not automated relays. The planet itself. His officers stared at him. Admiral, no one has spoken to Earth directly in over 200 years. Then try. The channel opened. Static. Noise. Then clarity. A human face appeared. Older. Calm. Eyes steady. No uniform markings. No background flags. Just a human. You are speaking to Earth Command, the human said. State your intent. Corvesh bowed his head, a gesture no coalition leader had made to an outsider in living memory. We acknowledge your authority over this region. We request mercy. The human studied him for a moment. Mercy was offered earlier, the human replied. You chose curiosity instead. Another ship vanished. Corvesh's voice cracked. What do you want? The human leaned forward slightly. We want you to understand something, he said. This is not punishment. This is prevention. Prevention of what? Of the next war. The feed ended. Across the fleet, containment fields tightened. Space folded inward again. Not crushing, not violent, just precise. In the council chamber, a senior delegate whispered what everyone else was thinking. If this is prevention, what does human retaliation look like? Kethrael answered softly. This is restraint. As the last coalition ships drifted powerless in distorted space, one truth became unavoidable. Humanity had not returned to the galaxy. They had simply reminded it why they were once feared. And the warning line was real. The galaxy had always measured power the same way. Fleet size, territory claimed, planets conquered. By those rules, humanity should have been insignificant. Yet now, thousands of coalition warships hung frozen in distorted space, stripped of power, trapped without a single shot fired. Trade lanes collapsed. Borders closed. Ancient empires stopped arguing and started listening. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy asked a question it had never bothered to ask before. What did humans actually prepare for? Observer Kethrael did not sleep. He sat alone in a quiet observation chamber, surrounded by drifting holograms of forgotten data. Records pulled from abandoned archives. Human documents labeled obsolete. Military theories dismissed as impractical. They all shared the same theme. Humans did not believe wars ended. They believed wars returned. Long before their disappearance from galactic politics, humanity had faced extinction more than once, on their own world, before they ever reached the stars. Asteroids, plagues, global wars they barely survived. And every time, they learned the same lesson. You do not build for victory. You build so you are never forced to fight again. Kethrael activated an ancient human file marked with a single phrase. The containment doctrine. The explanation was simple, almost unsettling in its calm logic. If an enemy could not move, could not communicate, could not escalate, then war ended before it truly began. No heroic battles. No drawn-out campaigns. Just control. And if control failed, then the system would erase the threat so completely that no one would ever try again. Inside human space, the truth was finally surfacing. What the coalition had crossed was not a border. It was a trigger. Deep inside Earth's mantle, facilities older than most alien civilizations pulsed with energy. They were not controlled by politicians or admirals. They answered only one condition. Existential threat confirmed. Across dozens of hidden systems, similar structures awakened. Some were built into moons. Others hid inside hollowed asteroids. A few were anchored in deep voids where no stars burned. They formed a web, not a fleet, a law of physics with teeth. On the trapped coalition flagship, Admiral Corvesh felt the pressure increase. Not physically, but mentally. Every screen now showed the same message. Containment stable. Escalation prevented. His science officers stared at the data in disbelief. These systems, they aren't draining us, one whispered. They're rewriting local constants. Our technology simply cannot function here. Another officer added, weapons won't fire because space won't allow it. Corvesh realized then the full depth of the mistake. Humanity did not bring weapons into space. They made space hostile to weapons. The Admiral opened a channel again, desperation heavy in his voice. Earth Command, this operation was a mistake. We will dismantle the coalition if necessary. Just release us. The human response came slower this time. Admiral, you misunderstand. This is not a negotiation phase. Then what is it? An example. Across the galaxy, intelligence agencies scrambled. Old maps were redrawn. Entire regions were marked with new warnings. Human failsafe zones detected. Entry not recommended. Ancient species that had once mocked humanity now dug into their own histories, searching for the moment humans had stopped expanding. What they found unsettled them more than the current crisis. Human expansion had not slowed due to weakness. It had stopped because their projections told them something terrifying. Eventually, someone would try to erase them. So they prepared to make that attempt unbearable. Kethrail uncovered a final classified record. A vote taken centuries ago on Earth. Human leaders, scientists, and civilians had agreed to one thing unanimously. If humanity ever activated the full network, it would cost them. Stars would burn faster. Systems would be drained. Some colonies would become uninhabitable within generations. The galaxy would be protected. Humanity might not be. They accepted it anyway. Back in the council chamber, the debate had shifted from anger to fear. If they sacrificed themselves just to stop us, one delegate said, voice shaking. What happens if we force them further? No one answered. On Earth, the human commander from the transmission stood before a wall of data. His name was not broadcast. His rank was irrelevant. He watched energy curves climb, slowly but steadily. A technician spoke quietly. Containment is holding, but long-term strain will increase stellar decay rates. The commander nodded. I know. Sir, are we sure this is worth it? The commander looked at the screen showing the trapped fleets. Worth it, he said softly. This ends wars before they reach our children. The technician said nothing more. In the trapped region, space tightened again. Another coalition carrier vanished, not violently, but cleanly, as if it had never existed. Admiral Korvesh finally understood. This was not human wrath. This was a boundary enforcement system designed to outlive hatred, pride, and politics. The galaxy had mistaken silence for surrender. But silence, Kethrail now knew, was humanity's loudest warning. As the containment field stabilized, Earth sent a single data burst to every major civilization. No threats, no demands, just a file, the containment doctrine, and one line beneath it. You may exist freely, but if you attempt annihilation, the universe will stop you, through us. Across the stars, ancient empires felt something they had not felt in millennia. Relief and fear, because humanity had proven one impossible truth. They did not need to rule the galaxy. They only needed to decide where war was no longer allowed. And they had already drawn the line. The galaxy did not sleep. Every major network, from ancient crystal relays to organic thought webs, carried the same live feeds. The trapped coalition fleets. The distorted region of space that refused to behave. The silent human systems that watched without blinking. For the first time in recorded history, war had stalled not because of force, but because reality itself said no. Inside the containment zone, time felt wrong. On the triumphant resolve, Admiral Korvesh stared at the stars outside his viewport. They no longer held fixed positions. Some appeared closer than they should be. Others faded in and out, like memories struggling to remain solid. Report, he said quietly. A science officer swallowed. Containment density is increasing. Not by pressure, by constraint. Space is tightening its rules. What does that mean in plain language? The officer hesitated. It means we are being slowly removed from the universe's permission to exist here. That was when panic finally took full hold. Not screaming panic. Not chaos. The kind that settles deep in the mind when survival instincts realize there is nothing left to fight. Across the fleet, captains sent final messages to families, knowing they might never be delivered. Engineers documented everything, hoping someone might learn from their failure. Soldiers sat in silence, staring at walls that offered no answers. They had crossed a line they could not see, and now could not escape. Far away, in the Galactic Council chamber, no one argued anymore. Representatives from rival empires sat side by side, unified by the same dread. A projection of the containment zone hovered in the center, slowly pulsing like a living thing. This cannot be allowed to continue, one counselor said. Entire fleets are being erased. Another replied. And what exactly do you propose we do? Attack the species controlling physics. Silence followed. Observer Kethrail stood again, his voice calm but heavy. You are still thinking in terms of punishment and victory. Humans are not. All eyes turned to him. They are enforcing a boundary, he continued. And boundaries only exist if crossing them has a cost. As if to prove his words, another coalition ship vanished from the live feed. Not abruptly. Slowly. Its outline faded, atom by atom, until even the concept of its presence disappeared. Sensors did not register destruction. They registered for completion. The council chamber felt colder. Within human space, alarms began to sound, not of failure, but of consequence. The containment network was working exactly as designed. That was the problem. On Earth, the human commander reviewed the projections again. The numbers were unforgiving. Sustained containment would shorten stellar lifespans in affected regions. Not catastrophically, not immediately, but permanently. A scientist beside him spoke carefully. If this continues at current levels, 3 peripheral systems will become uninhabitable within a century. The commander nodded. Mark them. You understand, she pressed. Those are human colonies. I know, he said. There was no hesitation in his voice. Only acceptance. Humanity had made this choice long ago. In the containment zone, Admiral Korvesh felt something change. The pressure was not increasing randomly now. It was directed. The remaining coalition command ships were being isolated, pulled into separate pockets of distorted space. There's separating leadership, an officer said weakly. This is deliberate. Korvesh activated the Channel 1 last time. Earth Command, you've proven your point. The galaxy sees your power. Release the rest. The human face appeared again. Tired now. Older than before. You misunderstand again, the human said. This is not about the galaxy seeing us. Then what is it about? The human's eyes hardened. It's about making sure no one ever tests this boundary again. Outside the flagship, space folded sharply. Several escort vessels vanished in quick succession. Korvesh whispered, You're executing us. No, the human replied. We are removing your ability to threaten others. By erasing us. By ending the idea that fleets solve everything. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, ancient war doctrines were quietly archived. Military academies paused their lessons. Scholars began rewriting entire theories of power. Because for the first time, brute force had met something it could not intimidate. Humanity was not destroying planets. They were destroying assumptions. In the council chamber, a delegate from one of the oldest empires finally spoke the truth aloud. If we had crossed that line instead, no one finished the sentence. On Earth, technicians reported rising strain across the network. The commander listened in silence. Sir, one said softly, we can ease the containment, reduce losses on both sides. The commander looked at the display, at the trapped fleets, at the quiet human systems beyond. If we ease it, he said, someone will test it again. Maybe not today, maybe not for centuries, but they will. He paused. And next time, they might not stop at a border. The technician nodded slowly. The decision stood. Back in the containment zone, the final coalition command carrier disappeared. Not in anger, not in chaos, in silence. The remaining ships were frozen in place, alive, powerless, enduring. A message spread through galactic channels moments later. Broadcast openly, unencrypted. A human statement. The consequence for crossing the line is not destruction. It is irrelevant. Those who cannot threaten others will not be erased. They will be remembered as the reason this boundary exists. The message ended. Across the stars, civilizations absorbed the meaning. Humanity had not punished the coalition for hatred. They had punished them for arrogance. And the price of crossing the line was now written into the fabric of space itself. The galaxy understood at last. This was not the end of the conflict. This was the moment the universe learned what it cost to ignore a human warning. The galaxy expected celebration. After all, the coalition threat had been neutralized. No planets burned. No civilizations collapsed. War had been stopped with terrifying efficiency. By every traditional measure, humanity had won. But inside human space, there were no cheers. Only quiet. On Earth, the containment network hummed with a deep, constant vibration that could be felt through bedrock and bone. The planet itself seemed aware that something unnatural was happening. forces moving through space-time that were never meant to last forever. In the command complex beneath Earth's surface, the human commander stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at a projection of the network. Red indicators had begun to appear. Not failures. Warnings. A systems engineer broke the silence. Stellar drain has exceeded early projections in 3 nodes. The commander did not turn. Severity. Marginal for now, but cumulative. Another voice joined in. If containment remains active at current strength, some stars will not recover. The room absorbed the words. Someone finally asked the question no one wanted to speak. How many? The engineer hesitated. 6 confirmed. Possibly more over the next few decades. 6 stars. 6 systems. Human systems. On distant colony worlds, people felt it before they understood it. The sky changed. Stars that had burned steady for generations dimmed slightly, almost imperceptibly at first. Astronomers recalculated, then recalculated again. Their hands shook as the numbers refused to change. Power grids adjusted. Long-term forecasts were rewritten. Messages were sent to Earth. Not angry, not fearful. Just honest. We see it. We understand. Across human space, emergency councils formed. Not to argue, but to decide. Humanity has always governed itself differently. No single ruler. No empire throne. When the species faced extinction-level choices, the decision did not belong to generals alone. It belonged to everyone. On Colony World Kestrel, 9, citizens gathered in open forums. Families watched the sky from city balconies while representatives spoke plainly. The containment network is protecting the galaxy, one said. But it is drawing from our future. A woman in the crowd asked quietly, can it be shut down? Yes. And if we shut it down? The answer was immediate. The boundary weakens. Others may test it again. Silence followed. A young man spoke next. Then they'll learn the warning was temporary. In dozens of worlds, the same conversations happened. No speeches about glory. No propaganda. No heroic music. Just a simple truth. If humanity stopped now, the galaxy would return to old habits. If humanity continued, some human worlds would fade, but war would not. Votes were cast. Not unanimously, but overwhelmingly. The result was transmitted back to Earth in thousands of short messages. Continue. Hold the line. We accept the cost. In the Galactic Council chamber, panic had shifted into something else. Shame. Representatives watched reports filter in from human space. They saw evacuation plans being drafted, not for fear of invasion, but for long-term stellar decline. They saw human engineers discussing how to dismantle their own colonies safely, decades in advance. One counselor whispered, they're paying for this. Kethrael nodded slowly. They always intended to. He had finally uncovered the final layer of the containment doctrine, a clause buried so deep it had been dismissed as philosophy rather than policy. Any defense powerful enough to deter annihilation must require sacrifice from its creator. Otherwise, it will be used casually. Humanity had built its greatest weapon so that it would hurt them too. That was the safeguard. Inside the containment zone, the remaining coalition crews began to notice the change. Not in their surroundings, but in the human responses. Containment remained absolute, but the human transmissions grew slower. The voices were more strained. Admiral Korvesh, isolated and powerless, watched the data feeds carefully. His people were not dying. They were waiting for something to end. He opened a channel one last time. Not to command, not to beg, to understand. Earth Command, he said quietly. Why don't you end this? The human face appeared again. He looked older than before. Lines etched deeper into his skin. Because ending it now would make everything we sacrificed meaningless, the human replied. What sacrifice? Korvesh asked. The human hesitated. Then, for the first time, he showed the truth. He transmitted a data packet. Star decay charts. Colony impact projections. Population relocation plans. Korvesh stared in horror. You're harming yourselves. Yes. To stop us. To stop everyone. The human corrected. Including whoever comes after you. Korvesh's voice broke. You could rule the galaxy with this power. The human shook his head. And then someone would one day try to overthrow us. That cycle never ends. Another pause. So instead, the human said, we pay the price once. Across the galaxy, the realization spread like a shockwave. Humanity was not protecting itself. It was protecting everyone else from escalation they could not survive. Neutral empires began sending aid, not military, but logistical. Star charts, energy optimization theories, even cultural records offered in quiet respect, not alliances. Apologies. In human space, evacuation ships launched slowly, orderly, without panic. Families packed memories, not fear. Children were told stories about why the stars were changing. Because someone tried to hurt others, parents said. And we said no. Back on Earth, the commander received the final confirmation. Containment stability achieved at a sustainable, if costly, level. The galaxy was safe. Humanity would endure. But it would never be the same. He looked at the display one last time and sent a message across all channels. Not a threat, not a demand, a truth. The line holds. Not because we are strong, but because we are willing to pay for peace. In the council chamber, no one spoke for a long time. Then a single ancient delegate stood and bowed. Others followed. Because the galaxy finally understood something it had never respected before. Humanity's greatest weapon was not control over space. It was the willingness to suffer so that others would never have to test where war truly ends. And that truth would haunt the stars far longer than any fleet. The galaxy did not move all at once. It hesitated. For centuries, neutrality had been survival. Empires rose and fell, borders burned and shifted, and those who waited long enough usually outlived the fire. Silence was safety. Distance was wisdom. But humanity has changed the equation. Now, doing nothing has a cost. In the Galactic Council chamber, messages poured in faster than translation engines could process them. Emergency councils convened on worlds that had not held one in millennia. Ancient rulers, machine intellects, hive minds, and philosopher kings all faced the same question. If humanity was paying the price to stop war, what does neutrality mean now? Observer Kethrael stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by projections of star systems flickering with new alerts. They are holding the line alone, he said quietly, and it is costing them. A delegate from a vast mercantile empire hissed in agitation. And what do you suggest we do? Join them? We cannot fight space itself. Kethrael's eyes lifted. You do not need to fight. You need to decide whether the next war should be possible. That was when the first message arrived. Not public, not dramatic, private, diplomatic, precise. A neutral system bordering the containment zone announced it was closing its trade lanes permanently to coalition-affiliated entities. No explanation, no threat, just action. Within hours, another followed. Then another. Fuel suppliers cut contracts. Repair docks refused entry. Information networks quietly restricted access to navigation updates. The coalition was still alive, but it was being isolated. Inside the containment zone, Admiral Korvesh noticed the change immediately. Supply forecasts collapsed. External communications failed not because of human interference, but because no one was answering. They're abandoning us, an officer whispered. Korvesh shook his head slowly. No, they're choosing the future. In distant human colonies, evacuation continued in calm, controlled waves. Entire cities were dismantled piece by piece. Infrastructure was repurposed, not destroyed. Nothing was wasted. Humanity did not retreat in panic. They withdrew responsibly. Alien observers watched in stunned silence as humans did something no empire had ever done voluntarily. They dismantled their own reach. On the world of Lathrix, an ancient avian civilization debated for 3 days without pause. Their historians reviewed every major war the galaxy had endured. Every one of them followed the same pattern. Expansion, fear, escalation, collapse. Humanity has broken the pattern by refusing the first step. At the end of the 3rd day, Lathrix made its decision. They sent a message to Earth, not asking for protection, offering help. Star energy efficiency data, containment stabilization theory, mathematical models refined over tens of thousands of years. Earth accepted, quietly. No alliance announcement, no banners raised, just cooperation. Soon, others followed. A machine collective redirected excess computational power to simulate long-term containment strain. A waterworld civilization offered evacuation support for displaced human populations. An ancient species that had once warred with humanity sent a single sentence across open channels. We were wrong. The coalition felt it tightening. Their ships were still intact. Their crews are still alive. but the universe around them was closing ranks. Corvesh accessed long-range diplomatic traffic one last time. He saw the truth laid bare. The galaxy was not rallying around humanity out of fear. It was rallying because humanity had done what no one else ever had. They had made peace expensive, and war is pointless. In the Galactic Council chamber, a final emergency motion was proposed. Not to punish humanity, not to retaliate, to recognize the human warning line as permanent. The debate was brief. A senior delegate spoke with a trembling voice. If we reject this, then one day someone else will test them again. And next time, the cost may be higher than stars. The motion passed unanimously. The council chamber sent a declaration across all major networks. Human-designated containment boundaries are hereby recognized as inviolate. Any force attempting to cross them will be considered a threat to galactic stability. It was the first law the galaxy had ever passed that was not enforced by an army. Inside the containment zone, the change was immediate. The distortion eased, not fully, but noticeably. The network adjusted, redistributing strain as external systems fed it new data and energy balancing solutions. Human engineers stared at the readouts in disbelief. "We're receiving assistance," one said softly. "From everywhere." The commander closed his eyes for a brief moment. "They finally understand," he said. Admiral Corvesh watched the containment field stabilize. His fleet was still trapped, his fate unchanged, but the universe had moved on without him. He opened a personal log, knowing no one might ever hear it. "We believe power was measured by how much space we controlled," he recorded. "Humans measured it by how much suffering they were willing to carry so others wouldn't have to." He ended the log and sat back, staring into warped starlight. For the first time, he did not feel anger, only clarity. Across the galaxy, military academies rewrote doctrine. Fleet construction slowed. Expansion plans were shelved. Species that had once glorified conquest began teaching caution instead. A new phrase entered the galactic language. Do not force a human solution. On Earth, evacuation timetables were revised again. Fewer stars were failing now. The cost was still real, but shared. The commander addressed his team. "We didn't ask them to stand with us," he said. "They chose to." A young officer asked quietly, "What happens when the coalition is gone?" The commander looked at the containment zone, where ships still floated, powerless, enduring, contained. "Then the line remains," he said, "and no one ever needs to test it again." In the Galactic Council chamber, Kethrael recorded his final observation for the archives. The galaxy believed peace required balance of power. Humanity proved that peace requires willingness to suffer first. As the stars settled into new patterns, one truth became unavoidable. Humanity had not united the galaxy through force. They had done it by showing everyone the cost of refusing to change. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe chose restraint. Not because it was easy, but because humanity had already paid the hardest part of the price. The galaxy stabilized. That alone should have been impossible. Trade routes reopened under new laws. Borders stopped shifting. Fleets returned to patrol patterns that were defensive instead of ambitious. For the first time in thousands of cycles, war planning rooms across the stars sat empty. Yet at the center of it all, Earth carried the weight alone. The containment network still held. The coalition fleets remained frozen, alive, powerless, enduring the consequence of crossing the line. The galaxy had chosen restraint, yes. But restraint required something terrible. Someone had to keep their hand on the switch. On Earth, deep beneath continents that had survived ice ages and firestorms, the Human Command Council gathered for the last time in that chamber. Not to debate, to decide how history would remember them. The commander stood before the others, his face lined with exhaustion no sleep could touch. Around him sat scientists, engineers, civilian representatives, and military officers. No ranks were displayed. No titles announced. Only responsibility. "We've received the updated projections," a scientist said quietly. "With external support, the containment strain is reduced by 37%. That still leaves losses," another added. "Several systems will never fully recover." Silence followed. A civilian delegate finally spoke. "If we end containment now, what happens?" The answer came immediately. "The line weakens." "And if the line weakens?" "Someone tests it. Not today, not soon, but eventually." Everyone in the room understood what that meant. This moment was not about the coalition anymore. It was about the next one. The commander activated a projection showing human space, stars glowing softly, some already dimming. He expanded the image until the containment zone appeared, warped and wrong, like a scar in reality. We built this to outlast anger, he said. To outlast fear. Even to outlast us, if necessary. A younger officer clenched his fists. We've proven the point. The galaxy stands with us now. Yes, the commander agreed. Today, he turned, eyes steady. What about when we're gone? No one answered. Because that was the question humanity had always feared asking. In a distant human colony being evacuated, a child looked up at a fading star and asked their parents, "Did we break it?" The parents knelt and shook their heads. No, we're fixing something bigger. Across the galaxy, observers watched Earth more closely than any fleet. They saw the quiet movements, the careful calculations, the lack of triumph. Kethrael stood in the Galactic Council chamber, reviewing the latest human transmissions. There were no demands, no speeches, only logistical notices and cooperation requests. They're preparing for something, a delegate said. Yes, Kethrael replied. An ending. The idea unsettled the chamber. What ending? Someone asked. Kethrael folded his hands. The kind where power is deliberately put down. Back on Earth, the commander received the final report. Containment could be sustained indefinitely if humanity accepted permanent limits. No expansion beyond current borders. No new colonies near the network. No attempt to reclaim what would be lost. Humanity would survive, but it would never dominate again. The commander closed the report and looked at the room. This is the final safeguard, he said. Not the network. Us. A scientist frowned. You're saying, we choose to stay small. We choose to stay responsible. A civilian delegate swallowed. And if one day we forget why? The commander's voice softened. Then we leave a reminder no one can ignore. He sent a signal. Across the galaxy, every major relay lit up. Not with an alert. With a broadcast. Earth spoke. Not to threaten, not to warn. To conclude. To all civilizations. The containment boundary will remain active. Not as a weapon. Not as a claim of ownership. But as a reminder of what happens when annihilation is attempted. Humanity will not expand this line. We will not enforce it beyond its purpose. And when the time comes that we no longer exist to maintain it, the network will collapse safely. The line will disappear. And the galaxy will be free again. Until then, learn from it. The transmission ended. No applause followed. Across the stars, leaders sat in silence, understanding the weight of what had just been said. Humanity has bound its greatest power to its own mortality. The containment network was not eternal. It was a trust. Inside the trapped coalition fleet, Admiral Corvesh felt the shift immediately. The pressure stabilized completely. No more ships vanished. No further escalation occurred. He accessed the final broadcast and listened in silence. They're choosing restraint, he whispered. Even now, one of his officers asked bitterly, and us? Corvesh closed his eyes. We are the proof. In the council chamber, the declaration was ratified without objection. The human warning line would stand. Not guarded by fleets. Guarded by memory. On Earth, the commander stood alone as systems powered down to sustainable levels. The hum beneath his feet softened, no longer screaming strain. A technician approached. Sir, it's done. The commander nodded. History will judge us, the technician said quietly. Yes, the commander replied. But it won't have to survive what we prevented. He looked up at a live image of the stars, some dimmer, some unchanged, all still burning. Humanity has chosen its place in the galaxy, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as the species that proved the universe could say no to war and mean it. Far away, Kethrael recorded his final observation. Power taken is feared. Power restrained is respected. Power surrendered is remembered forever. The galaxy held its breath, because everyone understood something now. This was not the end of the story. This was the last warning humanity would ever need to give. Centuries passed. Not on fire. Not in conquest. But it's quiet. The galaxy adjusted the way living things always do after surviving something they barely understand. Trade resumed along safer routes. New civilizations rose slowly, carefully, studying history before daring to expand. Borders became lines of respect instead of ambition. And through it all, one region of space remained unchanged. The human warning line. It was no longer marked by distortion or visible force. Most of the containment network had been reduced to a low, stable state, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. Space behaved normally there. Too normally. Every navigation chart marked it in the same way. Restricted, do not test. No empire challenged it. No pirate crossed it. No explorer dared to see what happens. Because everyone knew what had happened before. On distant worlds, children learned the story long before they learned how to pilot a ship. They learned about the day war tried to pass a line, and the universe refused. In the ancient world of Lathrix, a historian stood before a hall of students, her feathers dulled with age. Humanity did not defeat the coalition, she said. They defeated an idea. A student raised a wing. What idea? That power gives permission, the historian replied. Humans proved it does not. The students studied images projected behind her, old recordings of frozen fleets, dimming stars, and a single human broadcast that ended centuries of escalation. Elsewhere, in a machine-governed world, a synthetic intelligence ran probability models every cycle. In every scenario where the human warning line had not existed, the galaxy ended in extinction within 5,000 years. In the scenarios where it did exist, the galaxy survived, imperfect, scarred, but alive. The machine recorded a simple conclusion. Restraint is the highest form of intelligence. Earth itself changed. Humanity never returned to rapid expansion. They rebuilt slowly, choosing sustainability over reach. Some lost systems were never reclaimed. Memorial beacons drifted in empty orbits, each carrying the names of worlds humanity had willingly let go. They were not mourned with bitterness. They were honored with purpose. The containment network aged with its creators. Its components were maintained carefully, never enhanced, never expanded. Each generation of humans was taught exactly why it existed, and exactly why it must never be abused. The lesson was simple. This is not ours to use. It is ours to endure. On the last remaining coalition ship, time moved strangely. Admiral Corvesh lived long enough to become something unexpected. A witness. The containment field preserved life, but slowed decay. His crew aged slowly, painfully aware of every passing year. They were no longer soldiers. They were living evidence. Eventually, Earth opened a channel, not to free them, but to speak. The human voice was different now. Younger, calmer. You will be released, the humans said. Not today, but soon. Corvesh's voice was hoarse. Why? Because the lesson no longer requires you. And if we return to the galaxy? The human answered without hesitation. Then tell them the truth. Years later, the coalition survivors emerged, weak, humbled, changed. They were not greeted with hatred. They were questioned, studied, listened to, and everywhere they went, the same story followed them. We crossed the line, Corvesh told assembled leaders, and discovered it was real. The phrase entered the galactic language. Crossing the line. It no longer meant invasion. It meant ending yourself. In the Galactic Council chamber, rebuilt, simplified, stripped of grandeur, observer Kethrael recorded the final official account before retiring into obscurity. He had outlived most who once laughed at humanity. His final words were entered into the archive without edits. Humanity was never the strongest species. They were the most responsible. When the time finally came, it happened quietly. No alarms sounded. No warnings were sent. Deep within Earth, the containment network's core systems reached the end of their designed lifespan. Engineers stood by, ready, but they did not intervene. Because they were not meant to. The network did exactly what it was built to do. It shut itself down safely. Across the galaxy, instruments detected the change. The human warning line faded from charts. Space fully returned to normal. The scar healed. No one celebrated. Because no one needed to test it anymore. Earth sent one last transmission. Not a warning. Not a command. A farewell. The line is gone. Remember why it existed. Remember what it cost. And choose better. The message ended. Humanity did not vanish. But they stepped back. They became gardeners instead of guards. Teachers instead of enforcers. Their stories spread farther than their ships ever had. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy did something it had never managed before. It was learned. War still happened. Conflicts still flared. But no one ever again attempted total annihilation. Because everyone remembered the day the universe itself said no. Long after Earth's cities changed and stars shifted naturally, travelers passing through the old boundary region felt something strange. Await, not fear. Respect. They whispered the old saying, taught on 1,000 worlds. Earth sent one final warning. And then the rest, always spoken softly. Dare to cross, and endure the consequences. The legend did not glorify humanity as conquerors. It remembered them as something far rarer. The species that proved power could end a war by refusing to win it.